What if I told you that escaping slavery took more than just bravery and the North Star? The Underground Railroad wasn't just a network of secret routes and safe houses, it was a spiritual battlefield. While we often hear about Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and other abolitionists, there's a part of this history that's rarely discussed: the role of hoodoo, African spiritual practices, and root work in ensuring survival during these dangerous journeys. Escaping wasn't just about running, it was about calling on the spirits, channeling the power of the earth, and awakening the magic within to defy the impossible. This is the hidden story of how enslaved people used hoodoo as a weapon of freedom. Hey y'all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning in and happy Black History Month. On this channel, we're going to be celebrating Black witchy history, which is going to be a deep dive into the mystical, spiritual, and hidden stories that have shaped our beliefs, practices, and influence. All month long, I'll be sharing powerful tales of all things Black and magical and the spiritual forces that have guided us throughout history. So if you're ready to uncover the magic woven in our past, let's get started. So today we are going to talk about hoodoo and the Underground Railroad. When we learned about the Underground Railroad in school, the focus was about secret routes, hidden safe houses, and the bravery of abolitionists like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. We were taught that enslaved people escaped by following the North Star, using coded messages in songs like Wade in the Water, and traveling hundreds of miles to free states or Canada. We learned that the Underground Railroad wasn't a literal railroad, just in case you're having a Portia Williams moment, but a network of people, both Black and white, who helped runaways find shelter and safety. Teachers told us about conductors like Harriet Tubman, who risked her life repeatedly to rescue others, and about stations, safe houses where freedom seekers could rest before continuing their journey. But what we weren't told, that for many, survival wasn't just about knowing the way, it was about spiritual protection. The Underground Railroad had origins not just in abolitionist efforts, but in centuries-old African traditions brought by enslaved people. Many who fled turned to hoodoo, root work, and just pure conjuring, some spiritual systems deeply connected to West and Central African religious practices, which evolved in America as a way to maintain power and protection in a hostile land. These practices, passed down secretly in whispers and rituals, played a crucial role in escape. So for those who are like, girl, what is hoodoo? Don't you mean voodoo? Let's do a brief synopsis of what is hoodoo. So hoodoo is a powerful spiritual and folk magic tradition that originated from the West and Central African spiritual practices brought to America by enslaved Africans. Hoodoo is a system of conjure, root work, and personal magic used for protection, healing, justice, and survival. Over time, it developed uniquely in the American South, blending African spiritual traditions with indigenous botanical knowledge and European folk magic to create a deeply resilient practice. For enslaved people, hoodoo was more than just a tradition. It was a hidden form of resistance and empowerment in a world designed to strip them away from their identity and their culture. Through roots, herbs, psalms, and spiritual charms, enslaved Africans found ways to protect themselves, seek justice, and even escape bondage. This is where the Underground Railroad and hoodoo comes into play. So when planning an escape, many turned to hoodoo practitioners, conjure women, and root workers who provided them with spells, charms, and rituals believed to ensure a safe journey. These spiritual workers offered protection amulets, herbal mixtures, and biblical psalms infused with magical intent, all meant to confuse slave catchers, mislead hunting dogs, and strengthen the spirit of the runaway. One of the most well-known hoodoo tools used was High John the Conqueror root, which is a powerful charm symbolizing strength, resilience, and cunning. Enslaved people carried it in their pockets, believing it would help them outsmart their captors and invade danger. And if you want some High John the Conqueror root, you can get yours from BlaqueWitchYaya.com. But continuing with the story, and others use graveyard dirt, which is a sacred element in hoodoo, and they would scatter it behind them to disconnect them from those hunting them. Some rubbed their feet with a mixture of red pepper, pepper and vinegar to throw off tracking dogs, a trick passed down through generations of conjurer practices. Hoodoo also guided them through signs in nature. Of course, hoodoo is mainly connected with nature. Certain birds, wind patterns, and even prophetic dreams were interpreted as messages from spirit or ancestors warning of danger or showing the right path. Biblical scriptures were often blended with hoodoo as well in what is known as Bible magic, which is a common practice among enslaved people who had been forced into Christianity but secretly infused their own spiritual traditions into it. That's why you will see today many hoodoo people will utilize the Bible because they implemented those teachings during slavery, for one, to distract the owners from that they're doing anything else, to show like, hey, look, I'm reading the Bible, but they were mainly using that book for their own magical work, especially the book of Psalms. Many escapees recited Psalms 23, which we all know starts off as "The Lord is my shepherd," or Psalms 91, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High." Believing these words carried divine protection, some even wrote these scriptures on scraps of paper and wore them as charms around their necks, hidden beneath tattered clothing. It was also common for hoodoo practitioners to anoint runaways with special oils or perform small rituals before they left, calling on the spirits to watch over them. Beyond individual escapees, hoodoo played a role in collective resistance. Some enslaved people practiced curses and hexes against plantation owners who were brutal and cruel. There are historical accounts of enslaved individuals using conjure dolls, cursed objects, and spiritual petitions to weaken their oppressors or cause them to become ill, creating opportunities for escape. These acts of spiritual resistance were subtle but powerful, reinforcing the belief that enslaved people were not powerless. They had forces greater than their capturers working on their side. They had the spirits, the energy of the universe, and their protectors. So let's talk about the Beyonce of the Underground Railroad, the one we always hear about the most, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is one of the most famous conductors of the Underground Railroad, and she was believed to have been divinely guided through visions and dreams. So the dreams that they were having before, Harriet Tubman was a seer. Harriet frequently experienced prophetic dreams and will often fall into trances. She believed these were messages from God warning her of danger or guiding her path. Though history often attributes her visions to Christianity or simply due to a head injury she suffered as a child, they got to discredit her somehow. But many scholars believe that they were rooted in African spiritual traditions similar to hoodoo practices. So while running away, Harriet would stop suddenly on journeys because she had a feeling, that she called it a feeling, her intuition, that something was wrong, and she was often right. Slave catchers would be nearby, forcing her to change route. So they would be running away on a route, and then all of a sudden she's like, no, let's go this way. And thank God they went this way, because over here they would have been caught. She also used ritual protection methods for herself and those she led. According to some accounts, she carried a special root or charm for strength and safety, and it was believed to be High John the Conqueror root. You can get yours from BlaqueWitchYaya.com. Before escaping, she would pray over people, lay hands on them, and use Bible psalms in a way that mirrors hoodoo protective rituals. And sometimes there's like an entire ceremony, the meeting they would have before running away, that had hoodoo rituals and traditions intertwined in it. Many who followed her trusted not just in her strategic knowledge, but in her spiritual gifts, believing she was shielded by higher forces. So let's jump around a little bit, state to state. Let's start in South Carolina. There's an oral tradition about an enslaved root worker by the name of Aunt Abigail, who was known for helping runaways by performing rituals and giving them spiritual tools for protection. She lived on a plantation but was highly respected, even feared sometimes, by both the enslaved community and the plantation owners. According to the legend, enslaved people who wanted to escape would go to Aunt Abigail at night. She would rub their feet with a special mixture of herbs to remove their scent, ensuring that tracking dogs couldn't follow them. She also gave them a small conjure bag filled with roots, graveyard dirt, and iron fillings, which is a mixture used in hoodoo for invisibility and protection. So one night, a group of runaways visited Aunt Abigail before leaving. She told them to wait until the wind changed direction because the spirits had warned her that slave catchers were near. They waited 2 extra days, and when they finally left, they learned that the night they had originally planned to escape, slave catchers had raided another plantation looking for runaways. So had they left earlier, they might have been caught. Some say Aunt Abigail's spirit still lingers near the old plantation, protecting those who seek freedom. So let's go on over to Louisiana and Mississippi. There's a folktale passed down that tells a story of an enslaved man who used hoodoo to escape multiple times, walking right past slave catchers unseen. The story goes that this man, whose name is unknown, was caught trying to escape 3 times, yet each time he managed to avoid severe punishment. After his 3rd attempt, he went to an elderly conjurer woman on the plantation who gave him a powerful root, likely devil's shoestring, and taught him a no-see-me ritual. So on his next escape, he performed the ritual, rubbed his body with a special oil, and walked through the plantation in broad daylight. The overseers and slave catchers looked right at him, but did not recognize him as a runaway. He walked past armed men on horseback and continued on his journey north, never getting caught again. Now, some versions of this tale say he made it to Canada, while others say he stayed in the South, becoming a root worker himself. Now, let's go on over to Georgia and Alabama. In the 1800s, stories were told about a powerful conjurer who cursed a notorious slave catcher. This slave catcher was responsible for capturing dozens of runaways and was extremely brutal. He would brag about how no one ever escaped him, how he would beat them. However, after capturing an enslaved woman who had a small pouch of roots and herbs, strange things began to happen with him once she was in his presence. First, his dogs refused to track runaways. Like, once they're started on their journey, they'll get distracted, they'll start playing with sticks, they'll start playing with each other. Then he developed a terrible rash on his legs, right where the woman had kicked him while resisting her initial capture. Soon after, he fell from his horse and broke his arms. Locals whispered that he had been fixed or hexed by a conjure woman and he had never caught another runaway again. Many root workers, conjure women, and elders were considered dangerous by plantation owners because they gave enslaved people a sense of control over their destiny, and that's the last thing that slave owners wanted, to know that they had opportunity or a choice to escape. The fact that so many stories of hoodoo aiding and escaping have survived through oral tradition is a testament of how deeply it was believed to be a force of survival and resistance. And as we look back at the stories of hoodoo's role in Underground Railroad, it becomes clear that spirituality and magic were just as much as part of the fight for freedom as maps and safe houses and routes and sharing information. Hoodoo was not just a set of rituals, it was a form of psychological and spiritual empowerment. In a world where enslaved people had been stripped of their autonomy and rights, hoodoo reminded them that they still held power not just in their bodies, but in their spirits and ancestral connections. It provided a sense of control in a reality where so much had been taken away. This history isn't just about the past, it's a reminder that resilience, intuition, and spiritual power of our ancestors continue to influence us today. Hoodoo was more than just a tool for survival, it was a form of resistance, a way to reclaim their power, utilize their spirits and ancestors. And these practices, rooted in African traditions, carried enslaved people through their most hardest time in life and still live on in modern spiritual work, showing up in the ways we seek protection, healing, and justice. This is why understanding hoodoo as a part of Black history is so important, because it tells the untold stories of how our ancestors fought not just with their bodies but with their spirits. Their legacy is one of perseverance, wisdom, and deep-rooted connection to forces greater than themselves. So what do you think? Do you believe these stories hold truth? Have you heard of hoodoo being used in acts of resistance before? Let me know your thoughts down below. And I hope you guys enjoyed our first Black witchy history deep dive. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Until next time, you guys, Ashe, baby.